In this video, we're going to be using my two new favorite tools for web scraping, which is HTTPX to actually make the request to the server and SelectOlax to pass the HTML that's coming back. So this is probably one of the more simple methods for web scraping, but I do tend to like to come back to it if I need to. There are a couple of downsides though, which I'll explain as we go forward about selectors and how they might change on the website. But generally speaking, this is a great place to start. I'll show you how to identify websites that can be used with this method, and we'll then progress and export the data that we get out to a CSV. So let's get started. So the first thing that we need to do to make sure that this method is actually going to work on the website that what you're looking at is go to view page source. Now it's important you do view source and not inspect element, because inspect element will be the DOM representation of whatever JavaScript has done, but the view source is more accurate to what we're actually going to see when we request this from our code. What I like to do is check by searching for some of the text in the source itself, and if you find it within the actual HTML with HTML tags and everything like that, then there's a good chance that this method's going to work. So just make sure you do that first before you get all the way and then can't complete it. So I found this website here, and I'm looking at the URL. I can see that there is a bargain section and it has page numbers in it and what looks like a number of items per page, which is 100. So that's great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come back over to our code editor, and I'm going to create a virtual environment using Python. So I'm going to do Python 3-m venv. That's going to create a virtual environment. So when we install our packages, they are all kept separately from the rest of our Python, and it's all neat and tidy. So I'm going to activate this environment with source venv bin activate. This is a little bit different on Windows, but you'll be easy enough to find the command. I think it starts with script or something like that. So now this is activated, you can see we have our venv here. So I'm going to do pip3 install httpx and SelectOlax. So these are the two packages we're going to use. HTTPX is going to actually make the request to the server, and SelectOlax is going to pass the information that comes back. So in my folder, I'm going to create a new file called scraper.py, and we're going to open it up here, and I shall make this a bit bigger so we got a better chance of actually reading it. So the first thing we want to do is actually import what we need. So I'm going to do import httpx, there we go. And we're going to do from selectolax.parser, import the HTML parser. So this is going to allow us to actually go through all the HTML that we grab and get out what we need. Now, I'm going to think a little bit further ahead here. I'm going to say, well, we're going to be dealing with data in Python. And if you are dealing with data, you're going to want to have some kind of structure for it. So I like to use data classes. You can use other things too, like there's Pydantic and Marshmallow, but for the simple versions, I'm going to use a data class. So what this is going to mean is it's going to mean that we can put our data into this special class, which is designed for data, and then it gives us access to things like asDict, that we can actually manipulate the data and work with it how we want to. So I'm going to do import data class, and I know I'm going to use asDict later as well. So let's go back to the site and have a look. Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through the main search pages here, and we'll grab some information like maybe the name. I think these are two. I'm actually going to use inspect element here because I know that this page is mostly HTML, so this is now fine. I'm going to go and hover over this, and yeah, that's a separate thing. So we've got manufacturer, name, and a price somewhere as well down here. So those are the bits of information that we're going to grab for this in this case. I'm going to copy the URL whilst I'm here actually and come back to this as now. So let's make our URL this whilst we're here. There we go. Now I've identified a few pieces of information that we want. I'm going to create a new data class. And I'm going to call it, I'll say product, like this. And we're going to say this is going to have a manufacturer, and this is going to be a string. So we're just defining our data here. And then the title will also be a string, and price. I'm going to make the price a string for the moment, just because when you're pulling data from a website like this, it quite often it'll have the pound sign or something like that. So we're just going to leave it as a string for the moment. We might choose to do something with it later. So now that that's done, I know exactly where I'm going to be putting my data when we get it. So we can start to construct some functions now. So I know that this represents the page on the URL. So if I change this to a 2 or a 3, it's going to get us the next page along. Now, pagination is one of those things that you need to really understand the website of how you want to deal with it. Sometimes it's just easy to give it a new page number and just get a certain amount of pages if you know there's not that many, or if there's loads and loads and loads, quite often you can actually pull the link from the page itself. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm just going to say, give me pages 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll just do it that way. So I'm going to create a new function. We're going to create a function to actually get the data and turn it into the HTML and return the HTML that we need. So I'm just going to call this one get HTML. Now I know that I'm going to have my URL inside of here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say, well, I'm going to specify the page number that I want when I run this function. What I can do then is turn this into an F string, which is going to allow me to input this variable, whatever I choose, somewhere into this URL string. So we can then change the number of our page as we go through. This is quite a neat little trick. So now I've got that working, we need to actually make the request. So let's say our response is equal to httpx.get and the URL. Now I'm going to try this without any extra headers. I'm not going to put in a user agent or anything like that, and we'll see if it works, no problem. Otherwise, you might want to add in some specific headers like a user agent, etc. If you need them. I've got other videos on that on my channel too. It's pretty simple. You can just do headers. It's equal to a dictionary, user agent, and then the string. So from here, I'm actually just going to put this response.text into our HTML parser. So I'm going to say HTML is going to be equal to our HTML parser. We're going to give it response.text, and then I'm going to return out the HTML. We can in fact cut this part out actually, and we can just return it like this, and that will work just fine for us. So as we're dealing with more and more functions in this code on this page, we're going to want to be able to have a main function that's going to run everything for us. It helps keep the code nice and neat and tidy, and will help us change it as we need to as we go further down the line. So I'm going to create a main function here, and in this function I'm going to run the other functions that I need. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to say that our HTML is going to be equal to our function, which does get the HTML, and I'm going to say just page 1 for now. Then I'm going to print it out just so I know that it's working, and we can quickly check it out here. Now when you do this with your functions like this, you could just call your main function like this and it would run, but the more preferred Python way is to do if name is equal to main. So all we're going to do is if name is equal to main like this, with the double unders just there like that. All this means is that this code's only going to run, whatever we put in here, if we call this file directly. So if you were using this to import elsewhere, none of these things like the print statement, etc. would happen because it's not being run directly. So okay, so let's save and run. Okay, so we can see that we have our HTML parser object, which is great. So let's double check that this will work for us by just asking for a CSS, and we'll just do title and see if that works. And we need .text on here too. So we'll run this. And of course, I'm getting ahead of myself. I asked for a list. There we go. So now I know that this is actually working. Now, I'll explain all of this in just a second when we get to passing the page. So now that this is working, I'm going to go ahead and think about the pages. So what I want to do is I want to create a function that's going to pass every page HTML that we get out of here. So we're going to create that in just a minute. But to loop through all the pages, I'm just going to do a 4x in range here. So this is just going to give me the numbers up to, but not including 4. So this is going to give me page 1, 2, and 3. And then we can put our x value in here, and then we can just print out the same thing that we did before. So I'm just doing some testing here to make sure that this is working. And it was html.css first, and we did title.text. This is a really easy way to work out whether if this is going to work for us before we start going through all the different parsing and putting all the individual bits of data. And as you can see, this has worked perfectly. We now have page 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so let's move on to the parsing part of our code, our function here. So I'm going to call this one pass products with an underscore products like this. And we're going to be giving it the HTML of the page. Now, the HTML that we're giving it has already been put into our HTML parser, so we don't need to do that again. We can now just simply work with what we need. So let's go back to here, and we need to find an element that kind of represents every object that we want to get the information from. So we couldn't, for example, just go and get the title, because if we did that, we wouldn't then be able to search within that to get the rest of the information. So we need to go back up a bit. Still back up a bit further, because you can see the 173, the price isn't highlighted. Now there we go. So if you look on the HTML, we have a div class of product, and that is great because that's super identifiable. And if you go and check all of these ones, you'll see that there is a div class of product too. So that's great, and you can see it as I hover over it. So I'm going to copy that, and we're going to come back to our code. And we're going to say our products is equal to html.css, because with select_lax it's CSS selectors only. So that's why we're doing .css there. You can't use XPath or anything like that. And then we want to say, we want to give it the CSS selector. Now, as you saw down here, I use CSS first. Now, when you do this, it will just return the first match. But if you do .css, it's going to return a list of elements that match your selector. This is really important because even if there's only one element that matches your selector, it's still going to be returned in a list. So I want to do div.product like this. So now my products variable is going to contain a list of every element that matches this. And if you remember from the page, that's the ones that's got all the information in. From here, I'm just going to create a results list for everything on this page. And then we're going to do for item in product. So we want to loop through every item that was within this, which is still our chunk of HTML, which we can then pass through. And then we want to do something with it. Now, this is where our data class is going to come in. So we want to populate our data class with these 3 bits of information that we're going to pull from the page. So we're going to say that our new item is equal to product, because, not that one, product. This is our data class. So you can see there now, there it is. It's telling us it needs a manufacturer, a title, and a price, each of which should be a string. Okay, so let's go back to the page. And the first bit of information is a span class with this title __ manufacturer. Okay, let's go and do this. So we'll say our manufacturer, and the other upside of a data class is it's now going to give our code editor autocomplete, and that's going to be equal to, and we're in item now, so we're saying for item in products, we want to do item.css first, and it was a span with a class of manufacturer, and we want to do .text because we want the text from that object. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do the next one, and that was a title, and we'll do item.css first again, and we'll do .text, and let's go grab the selector for that. Title _ name, perfect, and let's put that in there, great. And the final one was price, item.css first, .text, because we're going to want the text. Let's go find where the price element is. Product price. Let's go down a bit further. We should find it. Okay, so you can see that this has like the two strings together on top of each other. So if we go to product price, it will just give us everything in there, and we will get the information that we want. So let's come back here and put that in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to print out the product as we got it, just to see how this is actually working. And that needs to be new item, apologies. So under here, we can now remove this because we don't need that, or you can leave it in if you want to. And we're going to do pass products for the HTML. There we go. So that should have been span. I'm sure you spotted that, whereas I didn't. Now you notice that we're getting a whole load of new lines here in the price information, which is a bit of a pain. So let's just try to do .strip and see if that works. Great, there we go. So I managed to strip away all of the extra spaces. You can see here now we are printing out for every item on the page our product data class with all the information in that we've been looking at, including the price, information, and manufacturer and title. So now that we know that this is working for us, we can start to think about finishing this up. But before we do that, I just want to show you, we imported as dict, and this is one of the great things about data classes, is now we can just do as dict around this new item like this, and when we run this now we get a dictionary out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do our results.append, and I'm going to copy this because I want to append the dictionary into my results, and I'm going to remove the print statement, no longer want that, and now I'm just going to return the completed list for that page. Let's close my terminal down, and we now have our data class with our information, are getting the information from each page, we're passing the information from each page here, and then we need to do something with the results. So let's just make sure that this is going to work for us. Let's say our res is equal to this, and let's just print it out for the moment. I'm just going to be going through every page and printing it out as we go, and you can see all the information zipping by there. Great. Okay, so the last thing that we want to do is we want to actually export this. So I'm going to create a CSV file, and we're going to save everything to that as we go. So I have a new function, we'll call this one toCSV, and we're going to pass it some information, and this is going to be a list of dictionaries. So our plan is to go through every page, you can see here, and then we will, instead of printing out the results, we're going to append it to the CSV file. So we're going to, as we go page by page, we're going to get page 1, put that in the CSV, page 2, put that in the CSV, rather than waiting for it all to be finished at the end and then stick them all in one go. So to do that, we're going to do with open, which is a context manager. You should always use a context manager when you're working with files so they get closed properly. I'm just going to call this one results without capitals, please, .csv, and I'm going to do open it as A, which is the append versions, the append mode. If you wanted to just write it, you would use W, but we're going to A, so every time we open it, we're just going to add our new lines to the bottom. So we're going to say our writer is equal to the dict writer, CSV.dict writer, not reader, there we go. We need to give it our F here. Now this is imported CSV at the top for me. Then we can do write rows, and we can give it our file there. So now instead of printing this, we can do our toCSV. We need to put in some field names here as well, so we have the information. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do these manually. You can get these from the keys and do it that way. However, we only have 3 columns, so there's no point. I'm just going to do it manually like this. So let's run this. Every time we get a new page, we're going to be getting our HTML, printing out the title, passing the information that we put in our pass function, and then saving it all to that CSV file. So when I run this, we should get 3 pages, 1, 2, 3, and our results.csv should be 300 lines long, and it is perfect. So now we have that information pulled out. So there's a few things that were quite interesting in this one. I've used a data class, which I definitely recommend using more and more if you can. You can use something other like Pydantic too, that works just as well, but this is nice and simple. It gives us access to this as dict, or we could keep the object as it is as a class and then work with it and do other things with it if we needed to. I have a function to get the information from each page that we give it a page number. We're passing this information out, and then we're appending the results to a CSV file. This is a particularly good method to do if you have loads and loads of pages, because if you get towards the end and something happens, you get nothing, whereas if you append to the file at incremental steps, like every page, you're guaranteed to get that data as you go through. It also means that you can have one big CSV file that you can just add to every now and again. but don't make it too big. If it gets too big, use a database. So that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you have enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you have, let me know in the comments section down below. Like this video always helps. And if you're interested in stuff like this, more Python, more web scraping, more web tech, stuff like that, then I suggest you hit that subscribe button too and keep up to date with all my new videos. Thanks for watching and goodbye.